Welcome back to Oppidan Talks, mentoring masterclasses from the very best in the business. Oppidan Education brings you life stories for the school run.
Emerald Fennell signed with United Agents from Oxford, but has since ventured far beyond the confines of an acting career. She's written children's books, played central roles in Anna Karenina, Call the Midwife, The Crown, produced and written a series of Killing Eve, been nominated for an Emmy, directed Kerry Mulligan in her own film this year, and next year, we're waiting to hear more of her West End script for Cinderella, a collaboration with Andrew Lloyd Webber. We're privileged and extremely grateful to have her with us. Welcome, Emerald, and thanks for joining.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, Emerald, we're going to go back to the beginning. For context, those listening, they might be as young as 10, they might be as old as whatever. But I'd like to know, when you were at primary school, what were your school reports like?
Oh, that's a good point. I wish I could say that they were really scolding and cross, but I was actually quite a goody two-shoes. I really minded that my teachers liked me. It was really important. So I suppose they were, I guess they might have mentioned showing off. There was usually quite a lot of that. And my best friend Daisy, who's been my best friend since nursery, really, since we were 3, and we went to school the whole way up till we were 18. I think usually we almost had school reports as a pair. So depending on who had been the naughtiest, you got a better. I usually got off slightly better because Daisy was slightly naughtier than me.
Can I ask, was it obvious from the beginning that acting was more than a passion?
I think so. I mean, my mum would say so. I did. I portrayed Mary in the school nursery, the school nativity nursery play, and I actually sort of really did it in a sort of quite a method way. So the birth of Jesus was quite harrowing. I think my mother, I think all the other parents were really horrified. My mother was like, right, okay, well, I think we know where this is going. But yeah, I think I just never really dreamed in a way I'd be able to do it. I just always kind of did it because I loved doing it. And I was always writing at the same time too. And I guess it was just one of those lucky things that when I was at university, my agent came to see a play I was in, and it was luck. I think for lots of people in this industry, it is a lot of good luck as well as hard work. And so I'm very appreciative of that.
Tell us about your teenage years. How did those years kind of prepare the way for the career that you have today?
Well, I guess I was very lucky because, I went to a really lovely school, boarding school called Marlborough. And it was just a very happy place. So that made, and as well as having very supportive, kind parents, I think that is almost everything that you need really to do whatever you want to do in life. I think my parents were always me and my sister are quite different. We're very similar, we're very close, but we're actually quite different. And they decided quite early on to send us to different schools, which was obviously a bit of a pain for them picking us up and negotiating all the different times. But actually, it made a lot more sense. And they were keen for us to sort of just go our own way. And so I think that combination, just being secure meant that you can kind of explore the things you're interested in. And I guess that I was at school as a teenager. I don't know, I suppose looking back, I cringe a bit because I was quite precocious and I think I was a bit of a goody two-shoes, bit of a know-it-all, like I am now, probably. But my mum would definitely say I was quite single-minded. There's a home video that my mum took when I probably was 7. And we didn't have a camera, so I don't know where the camera is from. She must have borrowed it from somewhere, but it's like almost the only thing she recorded. And she'd asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I said very obnoxiously, I want to be an actress or write stories about murder.
And you do both.
You've done both.
Yeah, I mean, people will know you as an actor, actress, and writer of series like Killing Eve. But of course, you are also a novelist, and you've written 3 children's books, haven't you? You've written Shiverton Hall and Creeper and then Monsters.
Yeah.
Have you always liked sort of child fantasy?
Definitely. Like, I just was such an avid reader because I didn't sleep very much so I was kind of an insomniac, I guess. So I very rarely slept. And so I mostly just read. And that, so, you know, it would mostly be Nancy Drew and Point Horror and all of those, actually mostly American sort of horror thriller type kind of books. And so when I left university and I was acting, but obviously starting out and, you know, not really working very much, I started writing, and it just kind of naturally was the area that I was interested in. I loved those books, and I felt like that I hadn't seen a huge number of those sorts of like proper ghost stories, proper stuff for kids.
Can I ask, before we move on to your acting and writing as a career, if you were in a position of power now for education, what would you do to the system? How would you set up an education system here?
God, well, I mean, I'm afraid, I think the first thing is that the system as it is now is kind of really unfair. And I say that as someone who's benefited from it, obviously. I mean, I think the whole thing would need looking at, really. But if I was in charge, I suppose something I feel like I could implement that might be helpful. I think there just needs to be a lot more, I suppose it's called PSE, or maybe it was at school, you know, stuff, just much more talking about feelings, much more talking about like the exposure of things on the internet, definitely social media awareness as a kind of, I don't know, as a lesson in and of itself. And also I think really in general, and I know this makes me sound like a crotchety old crone, which I am, is no phones at school. There just shouldn't, there's no world where you need a phone at school. The idea that because of course, if I had a phone at school, I mean, I'd just be on Instagram or like looking at what, there's no way, or TikTok or whatever it is, everyone, you know, there's no way I'd do schoolwork if I had my phone at school, because it's so much more fun looking at your phone. So like, of course you're not going to concentrate on equations. So like, I do think that stuff, there's a certain amount of school that you have to sort of like grin and bear. I know that's an awful thing to say. I loved school, but even for me, there were tons of classes that I just found, you know, like all of us do, boring and difficult. And so it's just like, it's that sort of lesson of being like, a lot of life is boring and difficult. And so it's quite good training to be able to kind of sit through it and grin and bear it. And I think once you have stuff that just gives you an easy out to just kind of not engage, it's not really great. I wish if I could go back in time, there were tons of things that I skived off. Not as in, I mean, I wasn't truant. I just mean like I gave up piano lessons, and I was, you know, just little things like that. And I just think, God, if I could just get up and play the piano now, it would have been amazing. So I just think, yeah, anything that stops kids from actually paying attention, because it's fun. It is usually fun. There's usually something worth learning. And if not, you can just stare at the person who's, you know, who you have a crush on in class, rather than
sage advice. They've added a few letters into that PSE curriculum now. It's got at least 7 or 8 different letters. So I think the focus is heading there. But the phone issue, I would definitely agree with. So if we move into the acting, that early time after you left university, take us through what it was like finding your feet in an acting career. Totally miserable or joyful at every turn?
Well, you know, again, and I'm always at pains to say this because I'm very kind of aware of it, I was very lucky in that my parents lived in London, so I could live with them. I think for lots and lots of people, you know, you can't even start out on an acting career because it usually, unless you're incredibly lucky, it will usually take you a couple of years to be able to pay your own bills. And that is just, and there are there's very, very little support system for people. So I think for me, that was what made all the difference, was having parents who lived in London. And I think that's obviously like, there's a lot of stuff will need to change in order to support people who are able to, you know, get into this industry. But for myself, you know, the first couple of years they weren't miserable. Of course, there was the odd harrowing audition. You know, most of Soho in London is strewn with, every doorstep has its own mortifying failure.
Emma, there are lots of
and-
people listening who are aspiring actors. Can you tell us, you know, what is it like when you walk in to an audition? Tell us, take us through that kind of process.
Well, and also what's really lovely for me now is I've been on both sides of it. So I've been, you know, I've been auditioning for parts, and then I've been auditioning actors for parts. So that's been quite interesting for me. But yeah, it's you turn up usually to casting director's office, and you wait in a waiting room, often with a few people who look very similar to you, but often vastly more attractive. So already you're getting your sort of, you can feel your self-confidence slightly slithering down. And then you go into a room, and depending on who the casting director, but honestly, the ones in England certainly, and in America too, are incredibly nice. You'll have had a scene to prepare. You'll discuss the part and the tone with them a bit, and then you'll read it through a few times, and they'll film you. And then if you did if you were what they're looking for, they'll call you back, or sometimes they'll just offer you the part. But it's the thing that I have learned so much over the years as an actress, but also somebody auditioning people. It is such a, the thing that you're looking for has so little to do with the person who's walking in. It's not, you know, so often actors that I know, and myself at times, you kind of leave and you beat yourself up because you feel you didn't do a good job, or, you know, you could have done better. Actually, usually you've walked in and they've already done the equations, because they've always said, okay, this person is 6 inches taller than the person they're playing opposite, so that's not going to work. Or, oh God, we already have 3 blondes, we need a redhead. There are these kinds of considerations that you just have nothing to do with. And so, you know, for me, auditioning people, what I was amazed by is just how absurdly talented people are. There's so many brilliantly talented people, and usually whether you get the part or not is down to something really out of your hands. And so that's quite a nice thing, I think, going into it for kids who do want to go into it. It's just knowing that that you can be, it's a sort of blessing and a curse. You can be the most talented, brilliant, handsome actor in the world, but there is so much luck involved that, you know, whether or not you are successful up to a point has very little to do with you, which is a very hard lesson. But I think also, if you kind of know that, if you know that you're playing the lottery, you can do stuff on the side which you also really enjoy. For me, it's writing. You know, I've always written, and I think it took a lot of pressure off me, because I knew there was something else I had that I loved. Because, and I adore acting. It is one of the just the greatest, most fun things, but it is also, you know, it's so precarious, and that's okay for some people, but psychologically, you've got to have something else that fulfills you. And I know it sounds very kind of like,
no, it's good
finger
advice.
waggy, but it really is. It just makes your life better, and it makes your acting better, because you're not walking into a room absolutely determined, just with that kind of need vibrating off you, because I think that often knocks you off course.
Can I ask, I want to come on to your writing acting balance in a second, but we spend a lot of time trying to work on resilience for kids and for young people. Such a nebulous concept, resilience. Anyone working in acting or in show business or whatever has built resilience in one way or another. Do you have a kind of concise tip as to how someone can build their resilience and improve on that element of their character?
Gosh, I mean, that's such an interesting question, and I agree with you.
There's not an easy answer to that. It's just
no, there isn't. But having said that, you know, I know that this podcast is listened to by kids and parents. I would look to the parents very much for that, because I think that so much of your kind of well of resilience comes from your support system. It comes from your friends, actually, not just, and your teachers and your parents, and but knowing that, I mean, failure is such a horrible word because it's sort of there's no such thing really, but falling on your face or falling on your bum, it really, in the great scheme of things, doesn't matter. Failing your, geography GCSE, these things in and of themselves, one thing in your life is never going to be your life ever. It just isn't. And there can be so many things, like we're all made up of some stuff, some successes, and a ton of like terrible embarrassments. I mean, there are some things at school that I still think of till this day. I mean, sometimes at 3 a.m, I'll remember something from when I was 16 and like crawl into a ball because, it's life. And I think the thing about resilience, I would encourage people to look at their failures as an opportunity to make their friends laugh. Whenever I've had the worst auditions, or whenever I've really truly embarrassed myself profoundly in a way that's almost impossible to ever get over, the only way I've ever been able to get through it is to just use it to make my friends laugh. And my father has a very good saying, or I don't know where it's from, but he says, nobody likes a winner.
Well,
and it's true, and it's kind of an English thing. I think the truth of it is that, resilience means that you've had to kind of put up with some bad stuff, and be living in the world, being 10, 11, 12, being 15, being 18, it's hard. It's so hard. I look back on it and, I think grown-ups are always saying to children, oh, just you wait until you have to pay bills. And and look, being a grown-up is kind of boring sometimes, but it's nothing like as hard as the stuff you have to deal with when you're at school. And it is hard, and people like belittle it. And so you can kind of acknowledge that it's hard and it's difficult, but also be proud of yourself, like kind of finding ways to navigate it. It doesn't have to suck you down. It can be the thing that really actually in 10 years time will be the anecdote that everyone begs you to tell at dinner. My close friend Kitty, who is a truly wonderful person, reads out her diary from when she was 14 often to us, because it's honestly, whoever is listening, whatever you have done, whatever makes you feel embarrassed or cringes you out, honestly, there's nothing even to hold a candle to a page of this diary, which really makes even the most hardened people sort of shrivel in complete agony. So, and it's the thing I love about her most.
It's all good advice, Amrod. I mean, it's the manner in which you win, isn't it, that is important. And you mentioned earlier you're writing so modestly. Of course, in 2019, you took on one of the most impressive gigs around. You took over from your friend Phoebe Waller-Bridge on the second series of Killing Eve. You've, I'm sure, talked lots about this, so finding original questions is probably difficult, but can you tell us about the process of writing a script for someone like Jodie Comer or Sandra Oh?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's such an extraordinary time. And I think the thing about Killing Eve that is amazing, and I wonder if it will be, something that more people consider doing, but they have a different female head writer and exec producer every series. And I guess what that means for those who aren't, that familiar with it as a concept is that you're the person that series who has the kind of overall, you're the umbrella that everyone else who's kind of working on the story is kind of like, huddling underneath, or hopefully you're not a leaky umbrella. But so for me, it was, I was in a writer's room with lots of incredible writers, and, you come up with a story, and then you kind of write some of the scripts yourself. So I wrote about just over half of the scripts myself, and then the other half were other brilliant writers. And how do you write for brilliant people? Well, it's so, it's actually one of the great pleasures of writing, because also with Killing Eve, Phoebe and the actors had already done all of the really difficult work, which is building a world. And I've said a few times before, it's a bit like building a doll's house. Phoebe and Jodie and Sandra and everyone involved built this amazing doll's house, and have these characters, and then I was able to come in and maybe move some things around and put some, hide some people in the basement. And, suddenly it's all just an opportunity to play. And it was amazing. I mean, they're just so talented. Everyone's so talented. It was overwhelming at times. It's grueling, I was definitely working for a lot of it for probably 18, 20 hours a day, just because the volume of work on something like that is huge, and that's just what it is. So, you kind of come to terms quite quickly that that's just your entire life.
What was your favorite scene?
Oh God, I mean, I really loved all of it, and we'll have to keep it reasonably family friendly, but there is a scene, there's a scene where there are a couple of things. There's a scene where Villanelle is in a shop window, dressed in a sort of pink dirndl with a sort of a mask, a sort of little piggy mask, and she's doing something quite dastardly in the window, and lots of people are watching it and they think it's a joke. And I think for me, that's a sort of, I don't know, it's all the stuff that I love usually is very, very dark comedy. So any opportunity for people to be laughing and not really quite understanding what it is that they're really seeing is interesting to me. But no, it was an incredible opportunity, really amazing.
I think there's something so creepy about listening to you describe it as a doll's house, hiding things in the basement. Gonna remember that one. I'm aware we've probably only got about 5 more minutes of you, but there are 2 big topics we've got to touch on before we finish. One is the crown. We had wonderful Josh, your love interest, with us back in lockdown, and he was great fun, incredibly modest as well, actually. I want to ask you a similar question that we asked him, which is, tell us about playing Camilla, and what are the challenges of interpreting or impersonating someone who's so well known?
Well, I think, that is that thing. I was quite lucky. Josh, is playing Prince Charles, who has been photographed and filmed and written about since he was born. Whereas Camilla Shand, as she was when I started playing her, there's almost nothing of her. She's an incredibly private person, or at least she was until, their relationship would, hit the papers. But so that was quite freeing for me, because actually I didn't really have the same thing that so many of the other actors on this had, which is, I was playing somebody incredibly well-known and famous. Camilla really still actually keeps her cards quite close to her chest. So that made it a lot easier. I think right from the beginning, what I kind of realized was this is a show, it is a fictionalization of the royal family, in the same way that Wolf Hall is a fictionalization of the Tudors, and that the Camilla and the Charles of our world are characters. They're not, so I disassociated what I was doing really as much as I could from the real person, and also, that's the wonderful thing about the way that Peter Morgan, the showrunner, writes, is actually he's incredibly fair-minded, and he and so you never get a script and think, oh no, I'm worried that this will be, you know that whatever it is, whatever somebody does, you will at least kind of understand why they've made that decision. But really, for me, I was just a huge fan of the show. It's just such an amazing show. And I'd heard that Josh was going to play Charles, and that was the reason, well, one of the main reasons why I was so keen to audition, because I'd seen God's Own Country, which is beautiful kind of romance that he's in. And he's so, of course, he's so modest, but he is, I think, probably one of the best actors in the world. He's not like anyone I've ever, I mean, no, there are so many people I've worked with who are so talented, and he is really, truly exceptional, and an incredibly nice person.
He is so annoying, isn't it? Oh.
And then, really? and then, I guess fast forwarding that series 4 is out in the middle of November, I think. And then I know your big project that you've been part of is coming out in April next year. That is, of course, Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cinderella, a story about the fairy tale of transformation. what an epic project that is. How did that come about?
I know. I mean, goodness. Well, so Andrew was looking, so he's always been obsessed with the Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella, which was the biggest, which still remains the biggest, it had the biggest viewing figures in TV ever in America. Something like 70 million people watched it in the 50s. And he loves Rodgers and Hammerstein. He's always wanted to do his own Cinderella, but he's never really been able to kind of find the right story to make it worth doing, I suppose. Because the thing about Cinderella and the Cinderella story is it just couldn't be more. It couldn't be more famous, really. And so I was talking to him about it, and I suppose the thing that I said while we were discussing it was, the issue with Cinderella now is that the story hinges on the fact that she's got to change to make someone love her. And so that's sort of, that's kind of a hard pill to swallow now. Like it's not very, if you're a writer and you're looking for a sort of character that you really want to root for and a love story that you really want to be invested in, you don't really want the message to be like, oh guys, as long as you just look incredible, you can marry whoever you want. So that's sort of that for me is the whole kind of, I don't know, maybe premise of our Cinderella, which is actually interrogating all of those things and saying we're doing the Cinderella story. It is absolutely the Cinderella story that everyone knows and loves, but it's kind of turned on its head in that we have all of these moments that we know, but we're asking, are they good? We're saying, okay, we all love, yes, hang on, I'm so sorry. Thank you very much. There's coffee on the stairs, guys. It's very important information for all you listeners that there is. Thank you. So I suppose the premise of our Cinderella is that we give everyone what they want, but we ask them why they want it, I guess. And that
we're excited for that. It'll be a whole new world once we're all back in theatres watching an epic like that. And also, we barely had time to discuss it, but your film, which is coming out later this year,
yeah.
a huge project. You've got Carey Mulligan starring in it and all sorts of other famous people. We wish you well for it. Has it just been a total dream doing something like that on your own big first thing, first feature?
Such a dream, honestly. I mean, it's just, I think going back right to the beginning of like what I sort of thought of and dreamed of when I was a kid, I was very lucky to go to Universal Studios when I was about 8 on holiday. And I remember then thinking, oh, people make this stuff. I remember thinking like, oh, that fence there. There was because the great thing about the Universal Studios tour is you actually tour not only their rides, but you tour the actual physical movie studios that are actually working movie studios. And I think and so they have people there just working their everyday jobs. And I remember, there was a guy like painting one of the gates on one of the kind of fake streets. And that, to me, at that age, I thought, oh my, well, of course these things don't magic from nowhere. Of course somebody's there making these things. And if there's somebody here making these things, I could be that person. I could try and make these things. And so for me to film my first movie, to make my first movie as a director in Los Angeles, with all these people, these actors and these heads of department that I admired my whole life, was absolutely, it was, of course it was difficult because we had a low budget and we had a very short shoot time, but it didn't feel, it felt magical. Like the whole experience was magical, really magical.
Well,
I think
we wish you so much luck for it. I'm so excited to see it. Can't wait. Really looking forward to it. We've just about got time to whip through a quickfire round with you before we have a go at our ridiculous game, which we're yet to be seen how that one rolls. A quickfire round. We've got 5 questions for you, and you have to try and keep your answer as concise as possible. So we'll kind of rattle through them. A little bit of elaboration's fine, but we want to see. We're just going to hit you as best we can. Okay.
Henry,
also, you can kick us off. Oh, okay. I'll kick off. Career highlight.
Working with Carey Mulligan.
Eve Polastri or Villanelle?
Ooh, both. Can't have either. You've got to have them both at the same time.
Most treasured possession.
Oh, my charm bracelet.
Which Disney character would you be?
Oh, okay. Flounder.
Okay. Who would you most like to work with?
Oh, I'd want to work with Josh O'Connor again.
And last but not least, the best advice you can give us.
To give the world, or to you specifically?
The world.
Henry, I've met you for 10 minutes and this is my advice. Okay, okay, right. Best advice. Oh my God. Best advice. Don't. Oh, okay. Best advice is smile.
You've done a great job of it for the last half hour, so we don't doubt your experience. No, that's so hard. That's the hardest question we've got. We thought we'd leave the punch for the end.
Of course. And so biscuit, can I just give you the options? Can you tell me what it is? And look, I'm going to give you the options that I have. I have a face mask. I have a passport. I have some kind of attachment that goes on.
There's hot coffee on the stairs.
Oh, there's hot coffee. Do you want me to do hot coffee?
No, David.
I've got this. Would that do?
No. That might break your nose.
What do I have to do?
The premise of the game, Emerald, is you've got to get, like the After 8 game, you've got to get a biscuit from your forehead into your mouth without touching it. And when we were doing this live, we would have thousands of kids all trying to compete with you to get their biscuit in first. But you can,
anything small. It could be that
perfect.
could work. That works nicely.
Okay.
So we're going to give you got 3 or 4 goes up to 30 seconds, and you're trying to get it from there into your
So I need to get it from here into my mouth.
Into your mouth. You can make as much noise as you want.
Josh can do it.
Oh no. Oh no. This is. Oh, I've got a sort of monocle. Not allowed to swear, of course. Crucial.
Yeah, you were close there.
How many times do I get? Do I get 4? Okay.
You can have one more go.
Do it. Then I'm determined to do it.
Okay.
I've got one more. I've got one more. Okay, come on.
Oh,
so close!
That was good.
You can't be good at everything.
No.
Piano and biscuit face are the 2 things to work on next year.
2 of the many things I'm terrible at.
The other thing is you had to have a go with something, because we've only had one guest out of about 30 who refused to play.
Who?
And Sebastian Folkes. He wouldn't do it. He said, don't be so silly, and just sort of
to
just
be
left.
fair, he is Sebastian.
Yeah, fair enough. Emerald, you have been a world-class guest. We're so grateful to hear so many interesting, what a diverse and interesting career. We've loved listening to it. Thank you for sharing your time, especially as a young mum of 1. We wish you every success with the film premiere and with Cinderella and all the glorious things to come. We'll be watching closely. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.